ドジャースのアンドリュー・フリードマン編成本部長が米メディアジアスレチックのポッドキャストにゲスト出演。ドジャースについて大谷翔平や佐々木朗希獲得の裏話まで赤裸々に語りました。大谷翔平が佐々木朗希獲得後に伝えた彼を獲得したの後に続けた言葉とは。ドジャースファン必見の内容です。
It's Andrew Friedman, the president of baseball ops and mastermind of the Dodgers. Andrew, welcome to Starkville.
Thanks for having me on, guys. Excited.
Yeah, we're excited to have you here. You know, Andrew, I keep hearing people speculate about whether you've built the greatest team ever assembled, and you couldn't even win your spring training opener. Is it kind of worry?
Yeah, I mean, if we lose again today, we're going to have to reevaluate some things.
Concern, panic, or doom? That's the question.
Yep.
I'm missing spring training in Arizona this year. It sounds like your camp has been wild. Looking at the video, it looks like the galleries at the Masters, only louder. Do you have a story for us about some unbelievable moment that you've witnessed as these people go thundering around your camp?
No, but I think you captured it really well. I mean, last year really kind of kicked it off, and it's hard to know degrees because last year was a lot. This year is probably more, but it's been incredible. I mean, from the first kind of early stages of pitchers and catchers, physicals, some guys are going out to throw, and there are hundreds of people there on that day. The next day, the first pitchers and catchers workout, there are people everywhere, and the passion, and they're screaming, and it's really been something, and really speaks to the passion of our fans. I mean, it's a Wednesday with pitchers and catchers.
There's always a buzz around the Dodgers. What is it about your team that you think has turned the level of the annual spring fervor up another notch?
I mean, I think Shohei was a big catalyst of that, from the 23 spring training to 24 spring training. I mean, that was a massive jump. Now, there's always been a lot of people, and there's been, quite the crowds out here for our workouts in the past. It's just a whole nother level these last 2 years. And, I'm sure Shohei plays a large role in that.
Well, and Andrew, just outside of Shohei, the Japanese superstars, the two pitchers, the aces, what has shifted in Dodger culture around, Ohtani and the wave of Japanese players that have come behind him?
Before the WBC, I went to Miyazaki, where the Samurai Japan team got together, and they were working out, getting ready for the WBC. And a couple things struck me. One was just how much arm talent they had. During their bullpens, it was incredible. On this 6-pack of mounds, how many guys that could pitch in the big leagues the next day, and just the incredible strides that they've made developmentally and the arm talent. But it was also, kind of tying into what we were talking about before. This was their opening workouts. Pitchers were throwing bullpens, long tossing, position players were taking ground balls, taking BP. And there were probably 20,000 people there, fans, to watch this. And so the passion that the Japanese fans have for the game of baseball. And then it struck me, there's a Dodgers hat, there's a Padres hat, there's a Red Sox hat, there's a Yankees hat, there's a Rangers hat. It was all splintered. And so the ultimate goal, obviously winning is first and foremost, and creating the best team we can. But to be able to create a real fandom in a country that's so passionate about baseball, will not only pay immediate dividends, but dividends down the road as well. Our hope is that, 8, 9, 10-year-old kid who is the next Shohei or Roki or Yamamoto is wearing a Dodgers hat, and I want to be a Dodger. And so, trying to do all we can to continue to grow our brand and our fan base in Japan.
You really are a global brand now. I was in Italy last year, and I can't tell you how many people are walking around Italy wearing Dodger caps. Okay, so I don't know who the Ohtani of Italy is, but you probably do.
I was hoping you were going to come back with that. I was on the edge of my seat.
Yeah. I'll send you the photo I took of like a baseball poster, like taped to a light pole. Like, hey, we have a baseball team. Okay, great. But the idea that you are a global brand, it didn't just happen. How long has this been a strategy of the Dodgers?
The Shohei part of that strategy has been omnipresent. I mean, from 2015, 16, 17, when he chose to go to the Angels, it was, okay, you'll be a free agent in 6 years. So thinking about it in that way, Yamamoto and Roki were kind of different paths. And it wasn't that we were like, let's get Shohei and as many really talented Japanese players as we can. It was just the timing and the market and who was available. But there was that added benefit for sure. And again, really Miyazaki and seeing how splintered it was and understanding it's an island, 120, 125 million people with, 80, 90 million people that are incredibly passionate about the game of baseball. That's a lot.
Yeah, it is. It reminds me too that over the last couple of winters, you've been in the middle of some of the most epic negotiations of all time. Ohtani, Yamamoto, Sasaki. I'm sure you were mixed up somehow in the Luka Doncic talks. And I ask you, which of those were the wildest and most challenging? And what was the wildest moment from that saga?
I mean, the Shohei that Friday with the plane and him going to Toronto definitely has to take the cake. That's got to win, hands down.
While all that was unfolding, what do you remember about that day?
Well, I had talked to Nez like an hour before that news broke and got off the call like cautiously optimistic. He didn't say anything that would suggest, but the way I was reading his questions and where his questioning was going, and I started to feel pretty optimistic. So called a couple of guys I work with, and I was like, my read, and I don't know whether it's going to be today, tomorrow, the next day, but I think we're in a pretty good spot. And 45 minutes later, it breaks that Shohei's on a plane to Toronto. And I called Nez, and Nez, he red phoned me.
Red phone?
That's right. The bat phone? That's the bat phone.
No, the red phone where he just sends you straight to voicemail. And I was like, oh my God. So he finally calls me back 10 minutes later. That 10 minutes was definitely the bottom of the bottom. And he called back and he was like, hey, what's going on? I was like, what do you mean, what's going on? It's all over the internet. Shohei's on a plane to Toronto. He's like, oh, Shohei's not on a plane to Toronto. He's resting and going to work out and throw.
He's with Decoy. What are they talking about?
Right. And I'm like, but Nez, you've told me that he wants to announce this on Instagram. And so therefore you wouldn't tell me if he was on a plane to Toronto, because you can't. He's like, yeah, that's true. I wouldn't be able to tell you, but he's not. I'm like, I hear you, but we're going round and round here because that's what you would have to tell me. So he's like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, you should trust me on it, but I hear what you're saying, but you should trust me. So that helps some, but it was still like, hey, he's got to tell me that no matter what. And so then there were, absurd pictures of, him going through like a private FBO that was like, oh, he landed in Toronto, but fortunately, the internet sleuths were like, no, that's not Toronto, and this and that. So that helped some, but that was definitely, and we had guys in the office like, okay, let's start talking about plan B. And I was like, not yet, not yet. Plan B was so much further below plan A that like, I'm not ready to go there yet.
Can you talk about Shohei, the Ohtani, the ball player? We always think of him as hitter, pitcher, and he wasn't a pitcher last year. But there's also iterations where it's like Shohei exclusively the hitter, the DH, Shohei the hitter and the pitcher, or Shohei not pitching a given season. So his capability in evaluating him, how do you actually evaluate a player like this and seeing like where he goes, the modeling about his career? Because, for example, Shohei Ohtani as a pitcher coming back, seems like he wouldn't steal as many bases. It just seemed like it'd be less of a priority. So can you kind of make sense of the puzzle of Shohei Ohtani just as an evaluator?
Yeah, I mean, usually we all have reference points, and we'll see players and we'll be able to compare some aspects to others. Not with Shohei. I believe that he is the most talented player to ever play this game. And that's a bold statement with a lot of incredible players before him. I think what he does in the box, the foot speed, what he does on the mound, the arm talent is unlike anything that we have ever seen before. I am really excited to have the opportunity to watch him do both. Like, I've seen it, obviously, when he was doing it with the Angels and appreciated it, but having, kind of a front row seat and seeing it up close and just the benefits to the roster and the creativity it provides. But also, he's passionate about doing both, and I understand that. He is really, really good at both, and I think he's passionate about it. It works really well for us, and I think it's great for the fans. I think it's incredible to see this guy do those things and be near the top of the league in two incredibly difficult things to do, and be in the top whatever in both is really mind-blowing. And I don't know what it'll look like 5, 6, 7 years from now. We're only kind of biting off this year, and him DHing and pitching in October is incredible. It's an incredibly exciting thought.
I asked this question of a lot of people around your team last October. I don't think I ever quite asked it of you. What do you know about Shohei now that you didn't know before? Because for me, especially like being around in those 2 weeks in October, was just how high he sets the bar, how great he wants to be. What do you know about him that people don't know?
I think he is an unbelievable team guy. The amount of times he would be like, hey, I'll do anything to help the team win. I think he really enjoyed that push for October and then being in that spotlight. I talked about it after we won and embracing with him. He said, okay, 9 more. First year with the Dodgers, we win. He's like, this is easy. All we have to do is do this 9 more times. It's that easy. But just what a good clubhouse teammate he is, and the way he prepares. I knew the work ethic was really good. Really good doesn't capture it, doesn't do it justice. And just the way, how dialed in he is to his body. Watching him go through rehab last year, and he'd be hitting off the tee, and they'd be like, 70% swing as you're like building up. And he could hit balls like 95 miles an hour, like over and over. And then they'd be like, all right, now let's go to like 90%. And it's like, boom, 108. And just his ability to dial and throttle is incredible.
Wow.
And he'll do that throwing as well. It's amazing.
I feel like watching him, I don't think he believes that anything is impossible. The stuff that we normally think of as impossible, he says, why? Is that a good read?
Yeah, and I don't blame him because he keeps doing these things. He's like, I understand that your brain can't comprehend it. He's like, my brain can comprehend it because I can see it. I'm confident I can do it. But my brain cannot comprehend it.
Has he thrown left-handed or hit right-handed? Have you
That's
seen
a great question. That's what's next.
I'm waiting for that. Pitch to himself. I would like to see that.
I want him to face himself in the trajectory machine.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, how can that not have happened yet?
Yeah, I'm sure it will.
One question I have always wanted to ask you, Andrew, is that you were at Tampa, in building an organization that did not have quite the same level of resources. You had to have a different kind of approach to efficiency, to finding value. And then you go to the Dodgers where they have certainly, you can't use the word unlimited, but certainly significant resources. And I imagine that transition wasn't just like me cooking for my kids and then doubling the recipe and saying, well, I'll just do it twice over. It didn't seemed like there was something different about the model that had to happen to go from those those organizations. So I guess what was the calculation, or what was the shift in model going from A to B in that situation for you?
Yeah, I loved my time with the Rays, and we were a bunch of kind of younger guys in the game and at each other's weddings and around when kids were born, and in a lot of ways thought I was going to be there as long as Stu would allow. And it gotten to a point in 2014 where I felt like I was getting complacent, and that scared me. Like, that was a terrifying, turns out, I think with retrospect, that wasn't the case, but just taking you through the mindset then. And, hadn't really ever considered leaving before, but during that time did. And part of the allure was throw myself in the deep end and totally figure out what things to preserve and keep as part of our operating model and what we had to tweak. I didn't even know what the CBT was, how it was calculated. So I had to throw myself in the deep end and learn, kind of rewire my brain. That was a real appeal and was something that was exciting about taking this on. And so doing that, throwing myself in the deep end that first off season, and proud that subsequently a couple years later they made a lot of CBT rule changes based on things that we were able to take advantage of, because we came into it with a totally fresh perspective. We had no idea how it worked, so we were able to go through it and be like, wait a minute, what about this? And so all legal, but subsequently changed. But being in the American League East with limited resources when I was with the Rays, and going up against the Yankees and the Red Sox, when the Yankees and Red Sox would do certain big market flexes, in a lot of ways, it was good if they were just doing that and not focused on development and, trades and roster spots 18 through 40 and how to maximize value there. If they were just focused on the very top of the roster, we had a chance to beat them. And the appeal of going to a team with a lot of resources and being able to do both. And, the analogy I give is with the Rays, we had a lot of success. We knew what our limitations were. We knew what markets we could play in and what markets we could not play in. So we became experts in these few areas. With the Dodgers, we have to be great in all areas. Every market and opportunity is something that we have to be dialed and on top of. And so that's just a much bigger kind of beast to wrap your arms around. And that took some time to try to corral that. But I think the balancing of, there are some small revenue principles that work, and I think work well for large revenue teams, small revenue teams. And when you're able to have that discipline with being big stack and bullying when you can, that's a powerful combination.
All right, this is where I have to do the initial check for people who don't know what CBT is. That is the basically the luxury tax, the competitive balance tax. And the good news is, I think you got this figured out. It looks that way.
Right. You giving that primer, I would have needed that in 2014.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you.
So you're now the evil umpire, right? I mean, and Hal Steinbrenner has announced the Dodgers are the evil umpire. The Yankees are totally off the hook. There are places in the baseball universe where people look at the Dodgers and say, the Dodgers are ruining baseball. What would you tell those people?
Yeah, I got asked that a number of times this winter. And my first response was, okay, they said, what do you think about 29 fan bases thinking that you're having a negative effect on the game, whatever? I was like, well, the inverse of that is that means our fans are really happy. And that is our mission. That's what we're charged with. We are stewards of this organization, and the passion that our fans have, that's the pressure we feel. We feel it from our fans to be as good as we can be and to try to reciprocate what they give us. And that's where that pressure comes. And we're a really healthy business doing really well. And so we pour it back in to the team. This isn't something where, we're putting stuff, up on eBay to try to make or go into a pawn shop. Like, we're a healthy business that's investing in our business and doing it in conjunction with our fans.
Look, obviously, we know the Dodgers aren't ruining baseball. You're great for baseball. But let me just ask it this way. Roster Resource is projecting you're going to have a $389 million payroll this year, give or take a few million, okay? And we know in Pittsburgh and Cleveland and Kansas City and Tampa Bay, they're never going to have a $389 million payroll because in this system, they're never going to have the revenue that your team has. So isn't there a real argument that baseball has to address that? It has to do something to address both the payroll disparity and the revenue disparity?
Well, I'll say a couple of things. One, winning is hard. It's hard with a big payroll. It's hard with a small payroll. It's just hard. And I don't think you ever want to do anything about revenue disparity because all 30 teams in Major League Baseball should all be aligned as best as possible to grow revenue and have this sport continue to, be even more popular. And so that's the revenue side of it. I mean, I haven't gone back and spent any time on this, but just anecdotally, I feel this way. If you go back and look at the early 2000 Yankees, I think their payroll disparity compared to like even number two or to the median or whatever is much more out of whack than what it is right now. I actually think things are tighter in a lot of ways than they were then. And so for some reason, it wasn't a big topic then, but is now. I do think that competitive balance, having 30 markets feel like in March, April, as you get into the season, that their team has a chance, I think there is value in that. How to achieve that, I don't know. I'm more focused on the Los Angeles Dodgers, but I do think there's value and benefit to that.
Well, and within, for example, your days in Tampa, where did this sort of disparity, or I guess where did the disparity most show up for you when you were in that market? Was it trade deadline, like, hey, we're right here at first place, we need that one player? Was it free agency? Like, where did it kind of bear its head, where the biggest challenge for you to wrestle it?
I mean, the obvious is the retention of star players. And so not only would we not have the ability to retain post their years of control, but as it was starting to approach it 2 years out, we had to really think about trading those players to add future talent to keep it all going. And that's a challenge, especially as you are creating a culture and have this building this ecosystem. And when you have to kind of trade out big, huge parts of that, like James Shields was a huge part of the Rays' success, not just on the mound every fifth day, not just the innings he took down, but the impact he had on our young starters coming up. I think the Rays' success on the mound that spanned such a long period of time, James Shields' fingerprints are all over that. And so to do a trade of that magnitude, it's hard and it's not easy. And, but that is a necessity to be able to reward the fans by being as competitive as you can be every year. It's a necessity to do.
There's a part of what you've built that I feel like people don't want to acknowledge. It's something that I hear from agents all the time. It's not just money. The reason that other players want to play for the Dodgers is not just money. It's also the culture that you've built, right? That makes players want to play for your team. They want to play with Mookie and Freddie and Ohtani and Kershaw. So of all these great players that you've acquired, what percentage of the appeal is money, but what percentage is that other part, that culture part?
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of guys who signed with us that either got offered more or right at and said, hey, I want to be a Dodger. So instead of going back to these teams, like, let's lock in and get a deal done, I think speaks to all of those things. Coming in 2015, it's something I harped on a lot, which was our overarching goal is to become a destination spot where our own players don't want to leave and players on other teams are longingly looking at like, oh, I want to be a Dodger, because that means you have the environment and the culture that people want to stay a part of or become a part of. It means that you're winning a lot. So there's a lot wrapped up in that. And it is never anything that we're going to put our feet up and be like, all right, we made it. We got it. But we have made significant progress year over year. And that's our goal, is to continue to make significant progress year over year. But we are definitely seeing it more. And I'll tell you what's interesting, the Roki Sasaki meeting. So the second meeting, you could bring players. So we brought some players. But then as we were talking about that meeting, we were like, we may do really well in this. And he may say, okay, I really like the Dodgers. I feel like they can help make me better. I like the culture. I like all these things, but I don't know how I would be received by the players. And that's important to me. So we set out to get a video from as many guys as we could get and tied it all together of them saying, hey, Roki, I'd love for you to be our teammate. Like, that was the only kind of thing we asked them to do, if they felt comfortable doing it. And it struck me how many of the videos, we probably had 19 videos or something. It struck me in how many of them, without any kind of script or prompting, they said, hey, the Dodgers really take care of players. They really help make players better. They really take care of families. And I want you to be our teammate so we can go win more. It was amazing how many people basically had those same message points. And it was incredible.
Your manager, Dave Roberts, I think also plays a big part in building that culture. He has 1 year left on his contract. He has said on my friend Buster Olney's podcast, he wants a deal that reflects his value, quote unquote. So this would be a great time for you to announce right here on the show your deal to extend the manager. It's all done. So Andrew, feel free to announce that.
Thank you. No, I mean, we started conversations, and I think the most important thing is he wants to be here and we want him to be here. I think anytime those things are in lockstep, way more often than not, good things happen. So unfortunately for you and Doug here, I don't have anything to announce, but appreciate the forum to do it.
Anytime. We're here for you.
Well, and Andrew, just Dave Roberts, as a manager, I mean, what do we not know about it? I mean, sometimes he takes a little criticism like, well, you have this amazing roster, you have all these resources. He seems to me very underrated. What are we missing here?
Yeah, I mean, I think so much of our world is outcome-based narratives. So if we lose a game, we lose the series, I think he takes unfair criticism. It's like when we win, it's like, oh, this guy, Freddie, got the big hit. Manager's position is to put guys in the best positions to succeed, be dialed in on the roster and how guys are doing and feeling, and being communicative and positive, and all of those aspects that sometimes they result in the team winning. Sometimes they don't, because we don't get that big hit, or we hit a ball really hard that hits the left fielder in the chest instead of splitting the gap. There's so many things that can play out, as you guys know well, in a baseball game. But the levers that you pull in terms of getting your team ready, in terms of his relentless optimism, and it was something that, like, in the interview process, we're like, yeah, this can be a real strength, but you have no idea until things happen. And there's really not been a time where that has wavered, and there have been ups and downs, and his ability to help navigate that and keep our guys focused on what's ahead has been incredible. So there was so much, like, during last postseason, like, oh, he's learned a lot, he's better manager in the postseason. It's like, yeah, or he's doing the same thing and things are working out better. And it's just too much criticism was levied at him, and it wasn't fair. But I guess gets back to the passion our fans have, and that comes with it. And we'd much rather our fans have that passion than not.
Yeah, what I love about Dave is, like, we talked to him before games, and he'd say he never really played the underdog card that sometimes you get. Like, he was always like, hey, you know, we had injuries and we were able to replenish. Like, that's a gift. And the ability to work with so many different cultures and players. I mean, you have translators and you have to really incredible to synthesize all that talent.
Yeah, I mean, he's a great connector. And now you have to meet him for a minute and a half to understand and appreciate that, and just how well that, as you know well from playing for a long time, just how well that transcends kind of a clubhouse and helps, you know, keep guys focused on what's at hand. And it can get loud and noisy at times and can be distracting. And he's a very steady hand in that to help guys stay focused on what's important.
You know, my wife and I once ran into him on the street, and before I knew it, he was giving her tips on all the places she should go shop. So he connected with her.
Yeah, exactly.
That's for that. Look, I know you got to run. You got a road game today. Here's my last question. If you could pick one game to watch this season, which would it be? Roki Sasaki's first big league start, or Shohei Ohtani's first trip to the mound as a Dodger, which I'm thinking might be one of the most electric events. Oh, I stumped him.
I mean, it's a tie. I want them both so badly. I don't know how to net it out.
I can't get you to pick one.
I mean, you didn't go like vanilla or chocolate. Like you do, like a lot of people have a clear preference, vanilla or chocolate. That's easy to answer. This is, I want both. I want to see both. I'm a pig. I want both.
I'm sneaky like that. All right, you can tell us why you're looking forward to both, and then we'll let you run.
You know, Roki, the arm talent is incredible. Obviously, getting around him some the last couple of weeks. He knows that he is not a finished product. So to have this kind of potential with our pitching group and that coming together, now it's going to take some time because trust takes time. You can't just hit a button and automatically have it and do a trust fall and feel great about it. So it's going to take some time, and we're going to be patient and be there for him every step of the way. When Shohei texted me that we got Roki, I thought it was incredible. He said, now that we got him, please make sure we take care of him. Like, it wasn't just about getting him. And I was like, you have my word. Like, that's important to us as well. But it was awesome that Shohei felt that. So just being a part of his journey. And so the first start, obviously, is what will really kick it off. So being a part of that and watching as we continue to climb this mountain together, is really exciting. And then with Shohei, just above everything else, I've talked about this some publicly, when we were meeting as a staff, kind of going through our off-season plan, and we were debating Shohei, like, all right, what should we offer him? What's max? How do we start this negotiation? And everyone's like quibbling over, do you do this or that? And I was like, hold on, guys, just round up. Because in 50 years, 30 years, for us to say that we had a front row seat to watch this guy play and compete, and that it is in a Dodger uniform, I don't know how you quantify that. So for him to make that first start while DHing and making that type of history in a Dodger uniform is going to be really special.
Andrew, you know what else has been special? It's having you visit us here in Starkville. We appreciate your time, appreciate your candor. Congratulations on everything. And please come back and do this again sometime, okay?
Yeah, no, I feel like I finally really made it, because I've been waiting for my invitation. As I see the podcast all the time, I'm like, oh, they look like they're having fun. That's great. Maybe one day. And then one day it happens. So.
Yeah. You've really reached the pinnacle now. Doug, does Andrew Friedman qualify for a statue in Starkville? What do you think? You're the curator of the statues.
We're going to have him as a hitter and a pitcher. So we'll have two statues.
All right, guys. Thanks for having me on.